Broadcasting live from inside the power band, this is the Blah Podcast. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm Kevin, your host. With me, as always, my two faithful companions, Chad and Ben. Lads, say hello to the folks at home.
What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up, interweb?
This week, we are going to be talking about a really cool science fiction film. It started out as a short and then was made into a feature-length film, and it is called Prospect. And for anybody out there who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend, and I'm sure my companions here highly recommend that you go and see it. It's really cool and really interesting and really different. And let's start off with Ben. How did you find this film? I'm curious about that. I know Chad is too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think probably, I don't know. I probably fell into like a watching trailers hole on YouTube or something, like a ways back. And that was one of the ones I saw. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then within the past month, it became available to rent or buy. So I finally saw it, and I had no idea what to expect. And I got to say, I was really floored.
Yeah, same. It was remarkable what they were able to do with the resources they had, man.
I definitely agree with that, especially after watching some of the behind the scenes of how this film came to fruition. I was really impressed at how they just dove right in. They bought an old warehouse and then they turned it into a fabrication shop, and then when they were done fabricating everything, they're like, okay, it's a soundstage now, and then they were like, let's make the movie.
Totally.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, that behind the scenes stuff's great. I'll chuck it up in the show notes for people to check out.
Absolutely, man.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Benny.
No, that's cool, man. I had no idea that any of that stuff was out there, actually, Chad. So it was really cool that you were able to share that stuff with us. All those little extras, but the whole thing on the helmets was awesome for me, because that was just one of the things about the movie that was so great. It was like, just, like you're clearly in this universe where there are just all these different people manufacturing like these suits or whatever and these helmets. And everybody has like this just kind of hodgepodge, like different, setups and different things, but they're all like sort of like compatible, and, so like all the helmet designs all the costume designs in general were quite amazing in my opinion. And it was cool to see something focusing on that. But what I had first found was that like the Orlac prospecting manual.
Oh, yeah. You sent that through. That was cool.
Which
we'll share that too.
Yeah. This is sort of like this really cool companion like manual that sort of just dives into, not doesn't really dive deep, but like sort of kind of gives you a little more of a peek into the lore of the film, but like also sort of maintains like the just, like it doesn't give you too much detail. It's like keeps somewhat of a mystery going. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Kev, would you be able to do a quick synopsis of the film, just because we haven't really touched upon what actually it's about yet?
Yeah, sure. I think, and I'm probably going to need some help because I didn't have the luxury of watching it more than one time, and I was pressed for time this week. I didn't get to watch all of the behind the scenes that I wanted to. The film is about a man and his daughter, as the title suggests, going to prospect on a alien world, another world, but they're prospecting these gems, and they come across two, still not really clear what they were, if they were other prospectors or what, and the father ends up dying, and then one of the other prospectors ends up dying. And the girl is sort of stuck with this guy who she's not sure if she can trust, not sure if he's going to take her or kill her or whatever. And it's about them sort of finishing the task that the daughter and the father set out to do, which was find this really...
Surviving, yeah.
Surviving, yeah, but to find this really large score of these gems.
Yeah, totally. It's like a heist-ish, Western, gold rushy kind of movie, but in space.
Yeah, one thing that resonated with me was the whole idea of prospecting had that very like the frontier of the U.S. back in the 1800s feel to it. There were so many similarities there, and I really liked that part of it. There were definitely things I didn't like about this movie, but there was a lot of things I did like, and that was one of them for sure. Was the whole prospecting feel was very it had that very like homegrown grittiness to it that I dug.
Yeah, totally. The directors, I saw like a little interview with them, and they were calling it a frontier sci-fi survival film, and I thought that was like a perfect forward description.
Yeah, a lot of people were kind of going on about the Western vibe, and I get that, but I thought they did a good job of not putting it too in your face. Some other stuff like maybe like Firefly or something. Really, kind of has that like sci-fi Western feel. But I think that's a little more in your face, whereas Prospectus is kind of like more coincidental, I guess.
It's like a layer, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's a sort of a gentle layer in it, I think, which I thought was cool.
I saw some people complaining about that, like getting all pissy about the language and how it was. They were like, "Oh, it's not even a sci-fi movie; it's just a Western," and if whatever. But I appreciated that about it. I appreciated that it wasn't like in your face laser beams and stupid shit.
Yeah, I could see what they're saying about the language, but in practice, like they probably aren't supposed to be. They're speaking English for our benefit, so we can understand the movie. But one would guess that we're in the far-flung future, and that they're it's clear that the written language is something different. So whatever they're speaking probably is not English. Yeah.
Fair enough, but I will say that I really liked God, I cannot remember the character's name. The guy that she ends up with for, most of the film after her dad dies. What was that guy's name? That character's name?
Her dad was Damon, and Ezra was the guy that she ends up with.
One thing that I really liked was Ezra's, speaking to the Western and the frontier idea, that idea of prospecting that you were just talking about, Ben, was that Ezra, he really spoke like somebody from the 1800s. I'm a huge fan of Westerns, and his language, like the way they wrote his language, was very like somebody living in the 1800s, like a prospector living in the 1800s. I thought that was cool. I really like that.
I loved the language stuff. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, no, I love his little, sort of monologues that he's like just throwing off while they're walking through the woods. And that Pedro Pascal was really awesome, I thought.
I wrote one of those things down where he was just like, "I myself have indulged, but I'm afraid for both our sakes, I must riposte." It's like, all right, dude.
Yes.
It's like True Grit, kind of reminded me of True Grit a bit.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly right.
I really, really, really liked it.
It's like he talks like that, but I didn't really notice that anybody else in the film spoke like that.
She had like a hint of it a little bit, it's a good offer or whatever, like she was
a little bit, but not so much. Her father a little bit, but not quite. It wasn't quite as thick, I guess, and it didn't seem like the mercenaries quite were, so it was almost like as if it was like a dialect of like wherever Ezra was from originally, or perhaps just like something about him being stuck on that moon for so long. I guess we don't know that, but I would assume that he was kind of stuck on the moon for a while.
He seemed like he was a little bedraggled, man, and that his mind was a little shredded in that way. But I think I want to say that like the main mercenary, the main merc, he sounded like Michael Clark Duncan, R.I.P.
From what? I don't remember what he played.
Michael Clark Duncan was in everything. He was massive giant of a man. He was in The Green Mile. That was probably one of the things he was best known for. But like I just watched the Night at the Roxbury the other night because I love that movie, and he was in that. He played the bouncer. He was in everything. He had a lot of roles in a lot of movies.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I thought you meant like a specific kind of Western-y thing, but yeah, I feel you.
No, I don't ever think he actually did a Western, but he was in Sin City originally. He was in the original Sin City.
Yep.
You know what? This is totally unrelated, but I gotta say this. When I record this, I'm sitting upstairs in my bedroom, and we have a picture window in our bedroom that looks out onto our back lawn. And at the edge of the back lawn is the woods, and there is a pair of eyes. I'm getting some eye shine off a creature right at the edge of the woods. It's kind of freaking me out, man. And I can see both of the eyes.
It's the crazy girl from the end of the movie with the music.
And they're moving. Right, exactly. Well, I was going to say it's probably a Sasquatch, but it's not high enough up, standing high enough up to be a Sasquatch. So it's got to be something else.
It's probably a cat, man.
I love how Ben just went, yeah.
Yes, totally.
Totally. Yes. So matter of fact, of course.
Yeah, it's a cat, dude.
No, I don't think that's a cat, man. I feel like it's looking right at me, though, and it's kind of bugging me out.
Yeah. We're getting eye shine. Yeah.
What do y'all rate this movie?
Exactly. Ben, Ben, go ahead. You go first.
I really liked it, man. I'm definitely into sci-fi, and I like the sort of indie movies that are just sort of surprising. And I haven't seen anything that good since I really loved Sunshine.
I was just gonna say that,
or maybe even Pandorum. I really like Pandorum as well. But
Pandorum, wow, I've never known another Pandorum fan. That's a great movie.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with like a definite strong 9.
Wow.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, I really liked it. There's just a lot of great stuff about it. I like the world building and the little details and the sort of like unspoken lore behind all the stuff, behind the tech and the different things in the movie. The little details I think is amazing. I really like that world they built.
Agreed. Lots of good lore, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. I could totally see how you'd end up there with it.
Despite the fact that it's like a low budget practical effect, sci-fi movie where they basically went into the northwestern rainforest and carted along some cameras and some people in spacesuits and sort of overdubbed some dust effects or whatever. I think they did a great job with their world. Like it makes it, that's sort of what, like when I first saw a trailer for it, I was like, oh, this looks like shit. Like I don't know, it didn't seem like anything that great to me. I'm like, why are they wearing spacesuits? They're in like clearly on like a planet where plants are growing, so you would assume there's oxygen, or like whatever. It didn't seem like it just seemed like it might be shit to me. But upon finally viewing it, I was really taken with it. I liked it. Took a shine to it.
I think the fact that they did such a great job with such a low budget, it's almost bonus points for me as opposed to taking away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think they needed anything else. I didn't think they needed any more crazy CGI. I'm not even an anti-CGI person by any stretch of the imagination. But what they were able to accomplish with just practical effects was really something.
For sure.
Right. I agree with everything that you said, and my opinion of the film is changing in real time as we're speaking. I really liked everything about it. Ben keeps mentioning lore, and I'm a huge fan of lore, and we here on the podcast are huge fans in general of lore. When I watch something and immediately I'm like, well, wait, what are they talking about? Like, well, what about that? What about that thing that he just mentioned? Like, well, what is that? And what does that mean? Like if I'm immediately wanting to know more about the references they're making, like I like that. That's a good thing to me. I think like Ben said, this reminded me of Sunshine in its differentness. Sunshine definitely had a larger budget, but it had that same kind of feel to it in terms of being something different in a science fiction film, which I really liked. It's also reminiscent of what?
I don't know if it reminded me, but I guess it was probably the last time I was just surprised by a sort of, like a sci-fi film just sort of popping up out of the blue. And, I don't know how indie Sunshine was, for instance. And I think Pandorum was pretty indie, but, you know what I mean? Like, just something that just kind of popped up that I wasn't expecting that turned out to be something really special.
No, that's what I mean by that. Like, that's how I felt about it. Like, it had nothing to do. It wasn't like Sunshine at all. Except in like its sort of spirit. You know what I mean? Excuse me. So it had that same spirit. It was reminiscent of Moon.
Totally.
With Sam Rockwell. I don't know if you've seen that, but like that's a really great indie sci-fi film. I mean,
I was going to mention that later.
Mind blower.
David Bowie's kid.
Yeah, exactly, man. So, Moon was really good. It had
anything with Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, anything with Sam Rockwell is great. I know, right? But so that's what I really dug the lore. I like the whole idea of making it very much like a Western, prospecting. Like that was very cool. I talked about that before. I liked how it had that gritty, dirty, low tech feel to it. And I dug what you said too, Ben, before about how like I think it was Ben that said like the suits were all different. Like everybody's sort of like requisitioning their own gear, but it's all universal. It all works with everybody else's gear. You know what I mean? It's just that there's
right. Yeah, you get the impression people, it's like whatever they could find at the store they fucking shopped at or whatever. Like whatever general store they happened upon before they got on the ship or whatever. It's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Just imagine them all walking around Home Depot in their suits. Like, do you have any fittings?
Yeah. Do you have any of those filters that we like?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So. Well, I got this filter, but I need my suit doesn't have that fitting. Do you have like an adapter?
Right. Right. I need an adapter for a P1 suit, you know?
And a side of juice.
And a side of juice. Don't forget the juice. And
Juice,
some hydrochloric acid or whatever it was that they kept burning everything with. But I dug the whole thing with the gems. Like, that was really cool. And the whole idea of, like, you know, really putting everything out there for like a large score that's going to change your life, like, you know, kind of risking it all. I mean, that trope has certainly been used before. And not to say that it's tired or hackneyed at all. I thought it was cool. That said, I think that the story, in terms of, like, you know, I like the elements where she ends up teaming up with the person that killed her father. And then there's a very big debate there as well. It's not just like, oh, you killed my dad, you're a jerk, but we got to survive, so let's do it like a Wonder Twins activate team up kind of thing. He had a very, like, you know, he made a strong case of, like, you know, he was going to steal my hard work, so that's why he got killed. And I don't know why he was defending that, because my recollection was he didn't even kill him. It was his partner that killed him with that large gun. So
he finished him off.
Yeah, but he finished him off. Okay, so
he finished him off.
So there you go.
But whatever. Yeah, that's neither here nor there. I mean, it was a necessity, really. I mean, what choice did either of them have? But you know,
that's it. Even Ezra's like, when she says, "You killed my father," he's like, "Well, technically, that's true." Like, okay,
right, right. And he Pedro Pascal, he really was, like, walked the line, man. He was able to pull off, like, creepy weirdo that you really just weren't sure of in a great way, and you couldn't tell if he was on the level or not. And I really dug that about him. The second I saw Jay Duplass, I had no idea it was Jay Duplass, who I'm assuming is Mark Duplass's brother, because
yeah, I think he is.
The second I saw him, I kept saying, wow, this guy looks like Mark Duplass. I wonder if that's Mark Duplass. And now I know the answer to the question. He was great too. I didn't like, I don't know, this is kind of hard to say. Like, I liked and didn't like the setting. Like, you know, adding in, like, the weird sort of dust was, you know, cool, but I don't know. Like, I thought the setting was cool, and, like, I know that it's an indie film with a super low budge, and I know they were working with what they had, and I get it, and they couldn't add CGI in, and that's fine, man. Films don't have to be CGI to be great. And CGI is great. I'm not I don't rail against CGI as long as it's lending to the story and not trying to be the centerpiece as it was when that became a thing like 10 years ago. I think that there were times where the setting it wasn't doing it for me. I was like, this isn't alien enough. It's too much like what we have here, but yet the atmosphere is not breathable. Like, I don't know. It just wasn't working for me all the time. And so I'm just being honest in saying that. That was really my only real gripe with the movie. You know, beyond that, I thought it was great. You know, if you can accomplish that on that kind of budget, you know, you deserve everything coming to you. So I don't know. That's my tirade.
What's your rating?
Ooh, my rating. Wow, that's tough. I was really impressed by Ben's very bold 9 out of 10. I'm going to give it same as I did last week. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 because of the things that I said, but, like, they were still able to really just rock it out on such a low budget, you know, and it's a solid film. Let me change that. I'm going to say 8 out of 10. Final answer. 8 out of 10. Final answer.
Cool.
Good man.
Final answer. Well, it'll come as absolutely no surprise to you that I nerded out hard on my rating.
Oh, boy.
Oh, geez. It's just a couple of quick things. Have you guys ever seen or heard of Barstool Pizza reviews on YouTube?
No, Chad.
Have you?
No, Chad.
All right, so there's this dude who's like, if a New Englander, well, like if I was slightly more of an asshole, which is hard to believe, and really into sports, and reviewed pizza on YouTube, it would be this guy. And he, like,
wow,
hangs out on Nantucket from time to time, and, like, is a huge Red Sox fan, and just goes around New York every day reviewing pizza. He just, like, takes a bite of pizza. He works for, like, Barstool Sports, which is like a indie ESPN style thing. I'm not much of a sports head, but anyways, he rates pizza, and his rating system is like 0 to 10 with decimal points. And if you, like, give something a round number like a 5, it's a rookie score. But if you give him like a 5.2 or whatever, it's better. And so, like, the score system is kind of like I think of it as like a earthquake scale, where, like, a 4 on the Richter scale is whatever, and a 5 on the Richter scale is like 100 times stronger than a 4, and a 6 is 100 times stronger than a 5. So like it gives a lot of room for there to be ratings. And so his pizza rating stuff is like there's no such thing as a 10. It's like impossible, because if you give something a 10 and then you eat a better pizza later, like what are you going to give it? And so like I've kind of applied that thinking to kind of the movie rating stuff. And last week I was talking about how I tend to rate all movies on one scale instead of having separate kind of thinking for like comic book movies, etc.
Yeah, you did.
So with that in mind,
say that.
I also was able to use this thing I did a few years ago. There's a site called Flickchart, and have you ever heard of that one?
No, I have not.
All right. I told you I nerded out pretty hard. So
it's okay, Chad. We expected as much.
Get to the fucking point, man.
There's a site called
What is your rating?
There's a site called Flickchart, and you sign up for it, and it just throws 2 movies at you on the screen, and you click which one you like better, and then it builds a like list of your rankings of movies. And so like 5 years ago, I sat down and did this over the course of a couple of days just because I found it interesting, and ended up with this giant list of movies and kind of a rough ranking for them or whatever. So I was able to like look at both of those things and see where the movie kind of fell into other sci-fi movies that I liked. And I ended up with a 7.0 on the rating. But what it told me was that like a 7 is like a great movie, an 8 is like an exceptional movie, and a 9 is just like a legendary movie. So I gave Prospect a 7. I really, really, really liked the film. And it actually makes, like, in terms of the way that I rank these other movies, it's better than all of the Star Wars movies except for the original trilogy. It's better than all of MCU except for Iron Man. It's just under the original Alien movie. So, like, if you think about it in that way, it's actually quite high up. But I wouldn't necessarily call it, like, a legendary movie. You know what I mean?
That was fascinating, dude.
I cannot stop laughing and loving you at the same time. Like, that was the best. And in the words of the comic book man from The Simpsons, best intro to a rating ever.
I liked how everything about your rating had everything to do with anything but the movie.
Exactly, right?
Well, you guys said everything there was to say about the movie. Like, I think for me, the strongest piece of the film is that for $4 million, they made like an exceptionally good film, and they made
agreed
an exceptionally good sci-fi film. It's not a traditional sci-fi film in the sense of like laser beams and swooping around with ropes and shit, but
and pew pew.
It was a damn good movie especially for the money.
Definitely, dude. I agree. I can't, dude. I'm sorry. I agree with Ben. Like, that was like the most intense intro ramp up to the rating that really had nothing to do with what the rating of the film was. That was great, dude.
Everything about your explanation of your rating had nothing to do with the film.
But at the same time, Chad, I completely admire everything that you just said about how you got to that, because that's so incredibly thorough, man.
You can talk shit.
I dig it. And fair. And fair. No, I'm not talking shit. It was awesome, man. What can I say?
My rating system has to do with something with like coming from my nut sack or something, and
there you go,
the barometric pressure,
general hyperbole, and my excitement about something at a given moment is given to change, subjected to more scrutiny. But I have actually given the movie quite a bit of scrutiny.
It's more visceral, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things I like about it, and 9 for me. And you know what? A solid 9, a non 9 point something or 8 point something. Like, that's fine.
Yeah,
9 is where I start to have my cutoff. The legendary stuff for me would come at the higher, like 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, 9. For me, I guess that's what I would think. Is you're getting up to the legendary status.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
No, like I had an Excel spreadsheet on this one, so I'm completely aware of how ridiculous it is.
Oh my god.
I'm not ashamed.
I know you're not. That's part of that makes it even more cool, dude. I wonder what Frankentruck thinks. Yeah.
Frankentruck.
Frankentruck.
As I mentioned a second ago, the indie and low budget nature of the film was, I think, like one of the biggest strengths. And one of the biggest or key elements of this that I really want to talk about is that it wasn't a blockbuster, and I'm super stoked that it wasn't. Like, I find that I'm enjoying non-traditional sci-fi stuff way more than the blockbuster stuff.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
Yeah. And like the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper to like make movies and render effects and stuff. And so like creators that couldn't do things in the past are being able to do them now because it's cheaper to make the stuff. And I was just kind of like looking into trying to figure out what I thought like an indie film was. And I was looking at some of the other movies that I thought were, you know, somewhat indie and somewhat low budget. Like you mentioned Moon, and Ex Machina is another one that I think was really good recently. And there was like Another Earth, Arrival, District 9, and then you mentioned Sunshine as well. So like there's like a whole list of like these kind of out there lower-ish budget indie films that I just so thoroughly enjoyed. And looking at that list of 5 or 6 movies, I just think that all of them are better than like a Marvel movie, or all of them. You know what I mean? Like I love Marvel movies, don't get me wrong, but I just have so much more of a soft spot for movies that are willing to try something new or do something different.
Definitely, man. Definitely. There's no question about it, man. I mean, I think I couldn't agree with what you just said more. Like those films are great films, and I'm all about people jumping in and trying to push the envelope, do something different. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, we've sort of entered this age where these large studios, you know, like Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars now, and it's like these large studios are just looking for the next mega franchise. It's not about making. I hate to sound.
They're taking that stuff and they're turning it into a money machine. I mean,
well, exactly.
You know,
Ben.
I love
exactly.
the Marvel movies, and of course, I love the Star Wars universe. But you know, I'm starting to encounter a lot of fatigue when it comes to that stuff. Like I'm just not. You know, there's no. I'm not going to be fucking surprised by whatever happens in Episode 9, even though I've just seen the trailer and found out that it's called Rise of fucking Skywalker. What? Like?
Yeah, how the fuck does that work?
Oh god,
how the fuck,
dude?
How the hell does that work? You know,
well, it's totally. Firstly, it's totally antithetical to what we were talking about in the Star Wars episode a few weeks back. Is that the Skywalker saga needs to die?
There's 9 goddamn movies about Skywalker. He doesn't need to rise.
No, he doesn't need to rise.
Yeah, we're like death to Skywalker. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. But you know, like to be fair, there's a lot of fatigue going on with all that stuff right now. So when something great and surprising, and you know, something that feels fresh, and something that just has, you know, that kind of lore that you know, like I'm curious about all those little artifacts from that universe from Prospect, you know, like all the stuff, the suits and the throwers and the, you know, like the pods and, you know, the people and the root pearls, you know, the gems, as you call them, that there were, you know, like all that stuff is cool, you know, like the whole process of them, like digging up those root pearls and like, you know, the different chemical compounds they have to use to like refine it and, you know, make it happen, and the delicate process. And if you cut the thing the wrong way, it dissolves the whole thing, or, you know, like all of that is
well, he was saying that if you pop that blister, it's like what is it, like a Cryptex box, like they talked about in the Da Vinci Code, how like if you try to break into it, it will break a vial of vinegar, and then the message inside will be dissolved and lost forever. Like that was the same idea. It had that blister on the side of it, and if you pop the blister, whatever material was in the blister would seep into it, and it would completely ruin the gem,
right? Yep.
Or the pearl, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's a root pearl.
Yeah, root pearl. Okay, there you go. Very cool.
It's definitely way more interesting than like panning for gold or something. It added a really interesting element to it.
Yeah, it's neat. It's really it's neat. It's a cool process that they came up with there.
Absolutely. And I would love to know, like, you know, Benny, talking about lore, like how did they figure out that process of those chemicals to get that gem? Because it's like, you know, they pull one out, they cut the thing, then they have to cut the white outer skin, and then they pull out this, like, what looks like a meatball, like a galumki, man, or like a stuffed sausage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does kind of look like a galumki.
Yeah, they pull out the galumki, dude, and then they cut the galumki open, And then there's like another ball of meat inside. It's like an Italian meatball. And then they cut the Italian meatball open and they make sure that they're not hitting the blister.
It's like a turducken.
Exactly like a turducken. And then once they open up the Italian meatball, if they've done it right, the gem is inside. And it's like along the way, they're like mixing and pouring these various chemicals on, these root pearls to make all of this happen. It's how do they come up with that? Like, how did they figure out how to do that? Like, that's the kind of lore that I want to know. That's the kind of lore that I love. Like, the other thing that I really wanted to know is like, how does this world work where these prospectors seem so utterly oppressed and they're like in debt, and like if they get this gem, it's going to like square them up with whoever they owe money to and get them like, a cottage in like the nice neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's like nothing has changed in the deep future. Like nothing has changed. People are still like, if you got money, then you can make money, and if you don't have money, then you got to put yourself through all these. The difference there being, I guess, is that you have a frontier that you can go to try and strike it big. But yeah, I mean, there's just I really dug like the music that C was listening to on like the personal music device, which was basically headphones that you plug those like little cylindrical things into, and it's like it sounds like super futuristic. But it's all this weird, like the stuff she's listening to. Like I sent just before the podcast, I sent you guys some links to some of that music. But
yeah, I was listening to it.
It's like all this stuff from this. It's like all this stuff from the 70s. Like some of it's from like Latvia, some of it's from Japan, some of it's from Cambodia. You listen to it in the movie, and you're like, oh yeah, it sounds like this crazy, like weird future music.
Yes, totally.
Really, really well chosen. Like in the third act, the character's name is Inuman. It's the female character, the female mercenary. She's like using that music, like she's like got it like cranked up super fucking loud so they can't hear like what they're talking about or whatever. And then like she's using it to try to confuse them in the middle of like the firefight. There's something really menacing and cool about that character and just about that whole third act, the mercenaries. And they accomplish a lot in that movie without explaining much, like it's like there's just enough information there for you to like be curious about it further than what's presented to you. And it's like, there's depth beyond like what's just being presented.
And the fact that they were able to do it all for so cheap is just amazing.
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with the conceptualizing of it and the writing of the whole thing. Just all that stuff. It's like you feel like there's all these onion layers of like Easter egg shit to be dug up and found out about. Beyond whatever the story is and whatever happens in the movie, like you feel like there's something out there to that. There's some meat to it.
I saw an interview with the directors where one of them was saying they spent months and months and months on the lore, and they like made a commercial for one of the items that they were like eating or something, and they were like, yeah, I never made the cut of the film, but it's like one of my favorite things is we made this commercial for this like food product. And it's just the fact that they took the time to build it all was just, it showed through so much.
Absolutely, man. And like, that's what really makes great storytelling. We've talked about storytelling a number of times, like the writing, in certain, things that we've talked about. And the writing is really key, man. And if you're going to add that level of detail, you're going to create a rich world that people are going to be interested in and they're going to want to know more about. If you go to the trouble of making a commercial for a product that exists in that world, like that's just layers of detail that flesh that world out, that flesh that microcosm out and make it great,
Yeah. I get off on stuff like that. That's something I really enjoy about filmmaking.
Definitely
that those little things that enrich the world and make it feel like a place that's really lived in and that you could go to, or that seems like likely or probable, or like it's funny because you said in one way there's something about it that's funny because they're basically in a well-known rainforest area through the entire movie. It's clearly like it's something you would see on Earth. It's not anything that unusual. But so like you have that setting juxtaposed with like all these interesting little doodads they've sort of invented from this universe to like kind of MacGuffin that away, to kind of to like get you past that, to get you beyond that, to make you be like, oh, okay, yeah, right, yeah, like it's an alien moon, and yeah, there's all these trees and plants and stuff, but like there's this crazy toxic shit in the air that like it's not even like they're alluding to the fact that you couldn't breathe the air. It's more like you need these filters to filter out the stuff that's in the air that would be harmful. So you're like, okay.
Yeah. I think I've just sort of remembered one thing that was sort of redeeming about my one little gripe there about the just the setting. Like sometimes I just wasn't into it, and sometimes I was that they had that backdrop of that giant planet looming, which definitely made it feel more, sort of immerse me more in that world. And that's really what I'm talking about when I have that gripe about like the setting, is that it took me out of that immersion. That was really my sort of gripe about that.
Yeah, it's totally fair enough. I didn't find it took me out at all, but to push back a little bit on what you said, just not that you're wrong, but just that my opinion differs a little bit, is that like, you're wrong. You're totally wrong. My rating system says so. The second is still hard.
Chad Walsh's new, improved, infallible rating system.
I give it 2 decimal points above the original Alien.
Yes, I've come up with a complex rating system to rate my films.
I'm not sure this is accurate.
Hang on, let me check my algorithm.
The algorithm does not lie.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were talking about the setting and whatnot, and how it was, could have been on Earth, I immediately thought about the second in the recent Star Trek movies. I think it was Into Darkness, when it opens up on a world where there's like purple people and there's all kinds of dumb, colorful shit here and there, and it's like, oh wow, eye candy. Or like Avatar, they build an entire universe or whatever, and then use like the stupidest font ever. I find that the eye candy nature of some of these alien worlds can be interesting at times, but I almost find it distracting sometimes. And like the only alternative that Prospect had would be a barren planet like Mars or something, which wouldn't work as well. So I kind of see why they ended up, or how they ended up, in a semi-similar to Earth forest style environment. And for me, I never found it pulled me out, but I can totally see how it would.
No, I agree with you, Chad. Look, dude, when I say that, I mean, I'm being nitpicky, and I get it. It's like,
oh, nitpicky's great. We need to be nitpicky. We can't just suck every movie's dick on this thing. We need to talk about crap.
Wow, well said. Yeah, I think, what are your alternatives? It's like the desert, or like the tundra, you know what I mean? Some frozen wasteland,
Or some like, really weird, colorful Avatar shit that costs millions and kind of is distracting.
Right, exactly. But I didn't mention that because that's out of their wheelhouse,
Yeah, I mean, I think, where they filmed it, at least it was like, it was an intense forest, like it wasn't just like, I mean, it was really photogenic and beautiful. It's not like, they fucking filmed some shit in Swamp or something, like just some, pretty ordinary looking, New England woods or something,
Yeah, it definitely had a Pacific Northwest feel to it. Like, I mean, they said that they set up the shop in Seattle, so clearly they were out in the woods with the Sasquatches. Yeah,
these ferns and moss and like these giant trees, and I could believe that you might encounter something like that on alien.
Sure, absolutely, man.
Who's to say that it has to be purple? Or
yeah, well, in the same way that when I was a kid, I hadn't really spent any time in the redwoods, and how much like the snow or the speeder bike sequence in Return of the Jedi with the giant trees was like, holy crap, it really looks like an alien planet, but it was just some dude walking around the redwoods, If you're not familiar with the setting, it can feel alien.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, on the production stuff, man, I think I was pretty blown away by the fact that this was the debut for the directors, their first feature film. Like, they did a damn good job for their first film.
Damn good.
Yeah, I kind of hope they decide to do something. I kind of hope they decide to do something else in that same world that they've built, but not the same thing.
Oh my God, yes, that would be sick. Yes,
like with a larger budget and like on a different planet with different characters or something. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, kind of like how like Alistair Reynolds, the sci-fi author, has a lot of different stuff in his Revelation space universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow, I read that. Ben gave me that book. I read that book. That was bizarre. Wow. Really cool stuff.
We got to get into some of that in a future podcast.
We should. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of the nerds out there that may or may not be listening. If they haven't discovered Alistair Reynolds, they should know.
Yeah, he's
not that
one of my
everything
favorites.
he writes is great, because some of it's pure shit, but the good stuff is really fucking good.
Yeah, he's one of the best, I think, currently anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, his good stuff is really good.
The music that you shared, I listened to before the show, but it really struck me while watching it. The score and the music was just so fantastic, especially like the score for me really struck. Like the stuff you said about like the, you know, old school 70s Cambodian and Turkish music, whatever, was perfect as like a device in the plot. Like it was great, but the score itself, like, was really, it really reminded me of The Revenant, which is a really great film that I really enjoyed.
Yes. Wow. Great reference. Yes.
It also just happens to be like this weird movie that when I fly to the States for 30 hours, I'll like drug myself up on Tylenol PM and like put The Revenant on and just pass out and have like the weirdest dreams ever. So I just had like a real soft spot for that movie.
Yeah, no, that's a great, where
does that fall in your, how does your algorithm read that one?
Let me look that up.
I'm guessing it's like an 8.1.
Let me just look that up.
He's calculating it now, Ben.
That's great.
But it really reminded me a lot of that movie.
Yeah, good stuff. I like that comparison though, Chad. The Revenant is a great film, and that was a cool comparison, especially where the music's concerned.
And they're both survival films too, so they have a similar thread in that realm as well.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, the film score was great. Nothing to take away from it, but I was really taken with just the extra music that they put in there. Like, you know, the initial song when C puts her headphones on and, you know, she's listening to the stuff. And then, like, you know, the stuff that Inumon puts on to like intimidate and like, it's cool.
Well, they had the right idea, and they said it in the interview and that behind the scenes video that Chad's going to throw in the show notes for anybody listening if you want to watch it. Is that they were about creating a world, and they were saying that, like, you know, this is, you know, we got this idea from the sci-fi films that we watched when we were younger, and the list they rattled off, they're all the films that we grew up on as well, the three of us, and you know, they put building a world as a large priority, and I think it paid off in spades, man. You know, like just like what we keep saying that, all three of us, like, you know, the music she's listening to and all these little references and all these little things, you know, a lot of attention to detail, man. Very, very cool.
Well, the world just seemed lived in. Like they spent enough effort so that it actually seemed like a world that people lived in instead of a set on a stage or something, you know?
It made you want to know about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there was just enough given to you that you're like, it makes you curious, you know? It's like, what the hell is that? What is it? What is she doing? Why is she rolling? Is that a gun? Like, you know, like it's weird. They show the throw the first time and, you know, it's like rolls it up and puts the clasp around it. And you're like, huh? Like, kind of looks like a musket or something, but I guess, oh shit, you know, then you find out like, oh yeah, that is a gun, you know, like it's just like little weird details like that just make you curious, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So they build the world and it's feels lived in, and they've obviously spent the time, and then the cast just sends it over the top. Like Sophie Thatcher as her debut was just, she blew me away, man. She did such an amazing job.
Yeah, everybody was really great. Bit parts and larger parts, you know. I mean, really, we're talking Sophie Thatcher and Pedro Pascal probably had the most screen time in the movie. But, you know, J.D. Bliss is great, and you know, all the mercs were awesome. It's a smaller part, you know. It's in the third part of the movie. Like the mercenaries are great.
And the purple dude or pink dude or whatever.
Yeah. And who's he? Like, what's, you know?
The I have no idea. He's just some rando. I was super delighted when I recognized Bubbles from The Wire and Slim Charles from The Wire. So Slim Charles is the lead merc, and then Bubbles was like the religious dude who tries to buy C at some point. Like I love that.
Oh shit! See, I did not know that. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that either. That was cool.
Because The Wire is like is essentially my all-time favorite TV show, and just so great to see those guys.
I've heard that from many people, and I've started to watch it, and then I've not continued. I need to watch that and get into it.
It's tough to get into. Like if you don't like the show after watching the entire first season, then leave it. But you kind of need an entire season to even get rolling because it's such a slow series.
I need the headspace to get into it. That's it.
Yeah. But once you're into it, man, you just won't stop watching it. Like I watched it back when Netflix sent you DVDs, and like I upgraded my account so that it would send me like 5 DVDs at a time because I was just cranking through it.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, I imagine I'll do the same with it whenever I find time. I tend to just devour shows.
Yeah, totally. I'm about to start that Umbrella Academy one, so I look forward to talking about that in the future.
I just finished that. Yeah, that was excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Yeah, I was kind of blindsided by that. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know zero about it, so I'm excited to be surprised by where it goes and stuff.
I gotta say, maybe this is foreshadowing something we talk about in the future or not. But I was really impressed by this year's sort of crop of shows that have come along. The Umbrella Academy, I wasn't expecting that, but like just things that I watched last year that I really enjoyed turned out to be great this time around. The newest season of The Preacher, the newest season of The Tick, the newest season of The OA, the newest season of like everything that came out this year was awesome. And Star Trek Discovery, or the Orville, I really liked. Like I devoured all of it, and it was great. I was really impressed.
Yeah, I think the fact that like all of these people are spending so much money, like Netflix is gonna pass $15 billion spent this year on content. Like I think the fact that a lot of the money that was spent like 2 or 3 years ago is finally starting, the stuff that they spent the money on is finally starting to come out. I really feel like it's a big wave coming of content.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. I mean,
absolutely. They're really ramping it up for sure.
The back on Sophie Thatcher, one of the things that jumped out at me was last week when we were talking about Captain Marvel. I thought that this is another great example of like a super strong female lead, and I think it's an example of a female lead done well. Like it isn't in your face, and she does a fantastic job of driving the entire film.
She does it with minimal dialogue too, man. Really, really minimal.
If it was like a young man cast in that role, it would probably have been reasonably similar, but I don't think it would have had the same effect. Like the fact that it was a female character, I think added a lot, especially, in the beginning where Ezra's like, you're going to go talk to these mercs. They're bored, man. What do you think they're going to do? Like insinuating some of the danger that's different for women versus men. And not to say that it's, not to say that it's the only reason, but I think it added another layer of like reasoning for her to accept the help.
Yeah, well, I mean, they kind of established her right off as being pretty independent.
Totally.
And sort of being her own person, even though she's young, and I think whatever vulnerability she does show in the movie more tends to be from being young and perhaps like, naive of what's going on rather than being female, which I think is good,
Yeah, no, well executed for sure.
Yeah, I thought that like, she's super reserved and quiet or distrustful. And then as the time goes on, she opens up a bit. And that scene where she's talking about that book that she loves and she just like really opens up and stuff. I thought that was such a great scene. Like the fact that she's finally starting to trust people and she trusts, she's trusting Ezra with this information where she probably didn't have that relationship with her own dad. So like she's really kind of opening up. I thought it was really awesome for her character arc.
Definitely. That really jumped out at me too. I like that part a lot too. It also showed to me like that sort of the naivety of children too, like, I mean, clearly she was like, between 13 and 16, but like, it really showcased that part of being young, I like that. That was cool.
And it was super believable. She, basically is reading like the Harry Potter of that universe and wants to be in school and have a normal life, but instead she's hanging out with old dudes like trying to survive, and it just really added a lot.
Yeah. And she's such a gnarly fan that like she lost the actual book, but she's like, what she does as a hobby is rewrite it from memory. She's in the process of like just rewriting the book from memory. You gotta respect that.
Yeah, it's like something we would have done at the age of 15 or 16 with Star Wars or something, like all this fan fiction people nowadays.
Yes, nerdery,
nerdtastic.
Thick. It's a thick nerd sauce.
It's something you would have done had there not been the advent of VHS.
Totally.
All or what you would have done before the Advent.
And her strength was really interesting too, where she's super quiet or whatever, and you dig that kind of youth vibe and the naive vibe and all that stuff. And then she cuts his arm off with no problem and talks about like climbing into to butcher animals and stuff. And she's like super tough about it, which I thought was really cool as well. Like even he's super impressed by it.
An hour to wash the blood out of my hair. Yeah.
She's a super fleshed out character.
Yeah, no. I don't mean to even insinuate that the character, it seemed like she was extremely naive or anything.
No, but she was. I agree with you in terms of the youth of being a dumbass teenager. I think we all were, you know.
Well, I think it was cool that they made whatever shortcomings she had, or you know, whatever problems she seemed to run into seemed to be more based on not knowing what to do in a situation, rather than just being like a scared little girl, you know, like Babe in the Woods kind of a thing, not having any, you know. But she had a lot of resourcefulness and good intuitions and brains, it seemed. But you know, whatever she did seem to like run in, wherever she fell short, it wasn't because she was a woman or a girl.
Yeah,
it was because she just didn't lack the experience, you know.
And I think that's why I thought that it was handled, well, maybe not handled better, but like why I appreciated it more than like a Captain Marvel is that it was a story for the story's sake, and what you just said added layers as opposed to like announcing to the world the girl poweriness, which again I didn't hate about Captain Marvel, but it just like I feel like this was handled more subtly in Prospect, and I appreciated it more, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, I'll buy that. Yeah.
I'd buy that for $1.
I'll buy that for $1.
The only other thing I've got on the cast is Pedro Pascal. I didn't recognize him at all until I looked him up on IMDb, and he was like the dude that got his eyes poked out in Game of Thrones in like season 3 or 4 or whatever.
Oh my God! I just put that together. Wow! Yes, the prince from
Oberyn or whatever,
that other house. Yeah, exactly, Oberon, and he his weapon of choice was a staff.
Yeah. And then in looking at his IMDb, I saw that he's going to be in the Mandalorian Star Wars show, and he's also going to be in the Wonder Woman sequel, which is cool.
Very cool. I like it.
Nice.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
I'm curious about the Mandalorian.
Yeah, same.
As Star Wars fatigued as I am, I'm curious.
And when you were saying a minute ago about the fatigue, it reminded me of I stumbled across Bob Iger or whatever, the Disney CEO, came out with a statement in the last couple of days saying they're pausing all Star Wars movies after Episode 9 for a while. Like they've just publicly said they're just going to stop for a bit and like focus on TV and stuff.
Good. Yeah, I just came across on MSN yesterday that they announced their pricing for their streaming service, and it's going to be $6.99 a month, and you're going to have access to all Star Wars.
Oh, it's like $7 or something.
All the Marvel stuff. Yeah, $7, and then they're going to.
Not that I need another subscription.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it?
I know, exactly. But they're going to have. That's one of the things they said, Chad, was that they're going to be coming out with this TV series for Star Wars and that TV series for Star Wars, and you know, a bunch of interesting Marvel ideas as well. Actually, one caught my eye, which was what if Peggy? They're going to do a what if series, which I think is great. And one of the stories is what if Peggy Carter, Steve never took the super soldier serum, and it was Peggy Carter that ended up being Captain America with a suit.
Oh, shit, really?
That'd be cool.
Listen to me. With a suit built by Howard Stark.
Nice. So it's kind of like retro-y.
Yeah. It's very retro, and it's sort of like the Iron Patriot, but like in the 1940s, you know? Like, that would be sick.
Yeah, right. That's really clever. You know, like if it was modern day and they just rebooted it Captain Marvel style, like it would be whatever. But the fact that it takes place potentially in the 40s, that's awesome, actually.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I think we're talking about when we talk about the fatigue. Like those are the kinds of ideas that I want to see. Like everybody's always playing it safe, always trying to come up with the next money making thing, and it's like, come on, just make some great art, man, and like people will get into it, you know?
Yeah, totally. You know, because with the Star Wars thing, I really liked Rogue One. I'm with you, Kevin.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Rogue One's great.
Coming away after all this time, like I think Rogue One is amazing. You know, like really, really good. It's refreshing. It's a different story with different characters that just takes place in that same universe.
Another female lead movie done well.
Exactly, and in my opinion, it's just perfect as a film. It's like perfection. Like I don't mean that in a lofty way. I mean that in like, you know, it lends to the original story very well. and it ends with everybody dying. It's like this show. In this episode, everybody dies. Like, everybody dies at the end of Rogue One, and I love it, man.
Just like our show.
It's like, that's what makes great cinema. It's like, you don't have to put a bow on everything to make everybody happy. It's like, just people can die, and it's fine. And you can connect with those characters even more and empathize with those characters even more because they are dying at the end. And it's like, when you have Cassian and Jyn dying on the beach like that, it was great. And like, they even, reused some of the takes from the original Star Wars that weren't used to add in, some to flesh it out, like having those pilots that were in the Death Star run,
that was
the original
amazing.
film. Yeah, exactly. Like that was just, it's such a great movie.
But we've talked about Star Wars as a general topic in podcasts in the past, and it gets brought up a lot because we're obviously all Star Wars nerds. But we never had an episode about Rogue One.
We should at some point for sure.
We should.
I agree.
I think we're all kind of fanboys when it comes to that movie, and rightfully so. Because I started getting like a boner for talking about Darth Vader at the end of that movie.
Oh my God.
Fucking whipping out the lightsaber and force choking dudes, and
That was so amazing.
Yeah, really dialing it in and going nuts.
Totally did
man.
not expect that in that movie, and man, all right. Well, so I'll shut up now because like we need to talk about that movie. But yeah,
No, we're totally getting off topic, but that's fine. Whatever.
Well, you were mentioning the Peggy Carter thing a second ago and how like a setting in the 1940s would be really interesting. It reminded me of Man in the High Castle. I don't know if you guys have watched that, but it's a little bit all over the place, but man, it's a great setting.
I haven't watched the third season yet, but it's so good. I watched 1 and 2 this past year, and I loved it. And I love so many of the players in that show, like Alexa Davalos, man. Yeah,
Because I was traveling in the airport, I don't know when, maybe like on my way back from India in like year 2000 or something, and in a bookshop I saw a book cover. It was an American flag with swastikas instead of stars, and I was like, what is that? And this is like, year 2000, so well before the show, and ended up picking up the book, and
oh no shit,
it was great that they spent the money on the like Amazon spent the money on it.
Isn't that based on Philip K. Dick?
Yeah, it's Philip K. Dick book.
Yeah, okay.
yes,
It's not
absolutely.
It's like, obviously it's a very short book, so it's really only aligns with season 1 of the show, and it doesn't really have much in the way of a plot. As a lot of Philip K. Dick books are kind of all over the place, and they're more, I don't know, explorations than like proper plots, I find a lot of the time.
But they took it and ran with it. They took it and ran with it in this show, and they did a really good job with it, man. The actors are great. The story's great. Like, everything's great. If you haven't watched it, Ben, you need to put that high on your list. It's really, really good.
No, I watched the first season of it. When it came out, and I never got back to it for one reason or another. I didn't have the time, and I know we're like a few seasons in now, at least, right?
Yeah, 3, I think.
Yeah, three just came out. So, 3 came out a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I'll have to get back into it, but I really loved the first one. The cast was amazing, and it's just got that. I don't know if you guys noticed that film adaptations of Philip K. Dick stuff seem to have this sort of trippy, like confusing, which end is up sort of vibe going on. Like anything, like from Blade Runner to
Total Recall,
Scanner Darkly, or like
Scanner Darkly was
anything
so
that
good.
seems to be made into a film seems to have this weird. Oh shit! Did you guys watch? Jesus, we're getting way off topic here, but we may as well just go with it.
It's okay.
Did any of you guys watch Electric Dreams?
No, what's that?
I watched the first 2 episodes, and I haven't gotten back to it.
There is an episode called Human Is that's amazing. It's got Bryan Cranston and other amazing people in it. The names are escaping me, but it's really like just the look of it and the feel of it is like this very kind of like 60s kind of sci-fi thing going on, like something about it that's really like I've never seen that captured on film before, and it's just outstanding.
I'll check it out.
I saw that the other day when I was looking through my Amazon feed, and I was like, man, I got to revisit that show and watch the rest of those, because that was definitely a cool idea.
I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Chad. It's like
it's like the Twilight Zone. It's like an anthology series.
Black Mirror style, but less dark or something.
Yes, exactly.
There you
Black
go.
Mirror
Yeah,
style.
yeah. And it's all sort of loosely based on Philip K. Dick stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's got some interesting ideas and stuff, but they do all tend to be quite loose, which I'm glad they're throwing money at. Like, the more the merrier in terms of trying new stuff.
Agreed.
He's had probably more than any
Yeah.
in terms of film attention.
Well, I was just looking.
But
Minority Report is another one that was
Yep.
a little bit out there. Scanner Darkly. I love the rotoscope nature of Scanner Darkly. It's just such a great.
That was also really cool. Yeah,
Great film.
Love that movie.
Back to we should probably get back to Prospect.
Back to Prospect.
Story. I think we should talk about the story of Prospect, man. One of my favorite things that like on second viewing jumped out at me is I love how they're taking the fucking bus to a moon. Like they're just like riding on this bus at the end of the line, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna get off at this stop, and then the bus is stopping. You know, like I just thought it was amazing.
No, that was a cool part of it for sure.
Yeah, it's, you got a certain amount of time to catch it before it goes back to wherever it's going.
I like that too. It was cool.
The other thing too is when they land and the circuit boards are all like burning up behind them or whatever, and the dad's just like, whatever, we need to get out there. I thought that was a really subtle setup for the fact that, you know, she comes back and can't get the thing off the ground. Like really anybody should have just stopped and fixed it then and there, but the fact that he didn't really just set a lot of the dominoes in place.
Yeah, for sure. But also they were like, I mean, you know, you get the impression that the reason he wasn't able to worry about it at the time was because he had to get out there and meet those mercs to do the job. And if he was late, it was going to cause problems and all these different things. But also you kind of get the impression that like, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. You know, like they could have fixed it, you know, like at this point, like they would have just been able to pull out some shit. And like, like there would have been like a spare part in a bin or something or whatever that he knew about. And they would have been able to just like fix it, which is, you know, would be like out of the question for anybody to think about right now, you know, like the moon lander, the new moon lander blew apart, and they just had one, they just, you know, they just swapped it out, took back off, came back home.
Exactly.
You know, like that's unheard of in like space travel as we know it. You know, like something goes wrong, you're fucked, you're not coming home. Like that's it. So they're nonchalant. Like they're just like, like I was more scared for them than they were scared when shit started to go wrong when they took off. You know, it's like immediately like something blew up behind them and I was like, oh fuck, they're gonna crash, you know, and they're like, no, they didn't crash, you know. Nothing happened, you know, like they just went into the atmosphere and landed, and you know, they were just off course. Like that's all that happened.
Their shitty rental car just was smoking a little bit, but they're fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird.
Yeah, it definitely had that like Rent-A-Wreck feel to it. Like we got the Rent-A-Wreck, you know, we got the 85 Chevy Corsica with the maroon velour interior, you know.
Yeah.
I dig that.
Yeah, the old Tom Waits monkey shit brown Subaru or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Any other scenes jump out at you guys?
I really liked when they encountered those folks that were just sort of, you know, hanging out in their tent that had that very kind of religious fanatic vibe to it. I really liked that scene. I don't know why. I liked his dialogue there. It had a good clip pace to it and a good feel to it. I also liked just the
like the little song the dude plays on the like wind up harmonica thing.
Yeah, that was cool too. And I also like the beginning when, you know, he's just sort of going through the process of how to extract these gems. Like I like that scene. I thought that was cool.
It was way better than the unobtainium bullshit in Avatar, man.
Oh God, unobtainium. Give me a break. Way better.
So much better, yeah. Like these weird organic pearls that come from like stuff that grows under the ground, and like there's like danger, and like, you know, like there's like one of the mercs like lost an arm from like trying to reach in and grab one or whatever, you know. So like every little step that they have to do that stuff is super important, you know, like ritualistic
and specific. Yeah, very specific.
I hadn't thought about it until just now, but the root pearl thing or whatever is very similar to like fur trapping or like silkworms kind of thing, where like the resource that's in vogue in the rich part of town is animal based, like pelts, instead of it being like mining for gold or mining for, you know, precious metals.
Well, it's like sort of what gives it its value, right? Is that it's like dangerous and hard to get these things, so, and they're rare, and you know, it almost has like a human price tag.
I loved Ezra's buddy, like Jay and Silent Bob. The dude just like stands there with like a rail gun. It was just super good.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I feel like if they gave that dude a bunch of dialogue, it just would have overcomplicated the story. Like he didn't need to have any dialogue, and it was handled well.
I agree. No, it was way better that he didn't.
No, but they also, did you see that there's like a set of trading cards?
No.
based on the movie that like just have like things. So like I think that's another one of those clever choices where they decided to make it sort of mysterious. Like the guy's quiet, but apparently the character Ezra says all this stuff about him. Like, is he, he doesn't know whether he's just like quietly meditating or whether he's like, vastly lonely or, whether he's like just, mentally ill or, like he doesn't know like what the reason for him being. Like they sort of leave it like this mystery behind it, which makes you more curious, which makes it seem more deep.
Oh, it's just like the Star Wars thing where, you watch it as a tween and they're like, oh yeah, blah, 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 Clone Wars. And you're like, oh wow, I wonder what that is, and the fact that they don't go into, or like the Matrix and they're talking about Zion and like you can imagine these things or whatever. But then when they show it to you, you're like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
totally.
I was like, I hope there's a sequel to this movie in that universe, but that they don't ever answer any of those questions, really.
Yeah, they just do something else.
Yeah.
In terms of the movie, I really dug the third act. Just when they finally meet up with the mercs, it's just like it's nighttime and like that whole scene. Like there's just something really menacing, and like despite the fact that there wasn't really anything overtly menacing, but just the fact that they had the prisoner there and everybody had guns and the character Inuman like with the playing the music really loud to like disguise what they're talking about or whatever, and like just like that all of that stuff like seemed there's something about it that like struck a chord with me. Like it felt.
Well, she seems to clearly have the like I want to kill you and give me an excuse not to kill you vibe the whole time.
Yeah, and the backstory for that character is apparently like she's like some kind of a war criminal that upon a regime change or a revolution sort of just like squeaked out of like getting all the getting charged with all these atrocities or whatever and became a merc. Like that's the backstory of that character. So
yeah, the third act thing for me, I really enjoyed that it was kind of like a heist film, but then the heist doesn't go right. The dig fails and then they have to kill the mercs, rather than the opposite being true, where like they successfully dig it and then they all jump in the ship and fly off. Like I think the failure of the heist was a cool little diversion. Yeah,
and it seems so unlikely that they're going to make it, but they do. It's like they sort of take everybody by surprise. And it's like you think Ezra's going to get left behind, and she comes back for him. Like it almost kind of has like that like Aliens vibe, where Ripley goes back for Newt, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, totally. But then there's like the pink dude just like smashing that guy in the face with a rock, and then just stands there as they walk by. I thought that was an interesting little thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's like they leave each other alone. Like all those things they set up that seem like they're like really so menacing, just sort of like are these like little hurdles that they just sort of jump over and get past because nobody's expecting them to. Yeah, I thought that was cool. I don't know, I liked it.
Yeah, the pink guy. He was very like, I'm cool if you're cool.
It's cool. Yep, I'm cool.
Okay. Yeah, it's cool, man. You guys are good. I smashed his face with a rock, so I'm gonna die now, and then. You guys can go over there.
Yeah, I'm just going to walk around, heavy breathing until I die, so.
Yeah. But he was apparently like some kind of political prisoner or something like that they were keeping watch over. So really, I think he was probably grateful to them because they created a distraction. He was able to get loose and that kind of a thing. But you didn't know how any of that was going to pan out. It's like that was the whole thing that was so great about that third act was like they set it up in this way that's so menacing and you don't know how any of it is going to pan out. It seems like they're going into it, that Ezra only has one arm and he's probably not going to be able to pull shit off.
Well, and then like she says like they're negotiating or whatever and she's like, yeah, my dad did this, and it's kind of weird, and it's kind of a weird way to talk about the guy standing next to you, and you as the viewer, you're like, watch what you say, girl, like you're going to get yourself in some shit. So it kind of ratchets the tension up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And she totally fucks up. Like, my dad always said, like,
the final scene too, where like, they launch up and they're flying towards the space station, and just like out the window, you see the space station coming close, and then it like cuts to her face and she just smiles, and it like cuts to the credits. I thought it was really well handled instead of it being like a sequence where they're like on the ship, like drinking a beer or some shit,
Yeah, having a conversation about all the stuff that just happened, which nobody wants to see that.
And I want to just quickly mention to the cinematography in the film. I thought it was really good, and I really like. In the interview they were saying, we basically had to rely 100% on natural light, and it was sort of obvious that they did, but Like, they really utilized it well. And when they did use artificial lighting, like in the pod scenes, like it was really good. It had a feeling of like, there's not a lot of lighting inside this pod, you know, and there's a lot of ambient light from the outside coming in, like from various different nearby stars and suns and so forth. And I just thought it worked really well. I like the way they did it. They worked with what they had and they did it great.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well said, man. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of the pod and spacecraft stuff really, and even the landings and stuff reminded me of that recent Neil Armstrong First Man film where, you know, landing the stuff is not easy and the natural light in space and everything being dark. It's far more realistic than like a super bright, stark, sterile 2001 Space Odyssey style spaceship.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, did you have any negatives, Benny? Like Kev, you mentioned the setting was kind of a potential negative for you, but were there any negatives on your end, Ben?
I think I'm going to have to wait for further down the line on that one. If anything, I would say when I initially saw a trailer for it was a negative. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I watched the trailer afterwards, and it totally would have screwed with it.
Oh, they're going to do like a Frontier movie where people are wearing spacesuits on a fucking plant that has like, you know, plants and shit. I don't know. Yeah, like it's basically like what Kev's objection to the. Yeah,
I'm super glad I didn't see the trailer beforehand. I watched it afterwards and was just like, oh god, that's terrible. They obviously have to hype it up a bit.
But I mean, I'm all about a shitty I'm all about a trailer for something that seemed shitty that turns out to be great.
For sure.
I'll still watch. I'll watch it. And I love being pleasantly surprised more than anything. So, you know, I think that was all part of it, you know, like, so it's still, that's not really a negative. It's kind of a plus. It's like, I love watching something that I think is just, you know, not going to be that great, but I'm ultimately like, I have a problem and I need to watch movies. So I'm even going to watch one that I suspect might be shitty. And then like, it turns out that it's not shitty. It's amazing. That's good. I love it when that happens.
I only had one minor gripe with the film, which again, it may not even be a gripe so much as I just picked up on something. Was like in the initial dig when he's kind of like talking about the dig with C, the daughter, and explaining things really for the benefit of the audience. And she like almost tips that liquid and he's like, don't be careful. It's going to blow the whole dig site. I just immediately was like, oh, well, that's obviously how the movie's going to resolve. You know, it just like immediately jumped out at me. It was a little heavy handed, but I mean, in the grand scheme of negatives, it's such a minor thing.
If I had $1 for every time that happened in a movie, I'd probably have a couple $100
for sure.
Yeah, I'm with that. That didn't actually jump out at me, but again, like I said, I watched this movie in way too many chunks. Like I was really trying to sit down and watch it, and it was impossible, man. My life is just not designed that way right now.
Yeah. Well, even just getting through it the one time, it was worth it. It was a great film.
Definitely.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. And anybody out there, I think you owe it to yourself to check the movie out. It's really good.
Yeah, it's a solid 6.983 out of 10.
6.983 out of 10. I like that, man. You should, you know what? The name of this episode needs to be 6.983 out of 10. repeating.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. Repeating. Repeating. I just want to say that this was a great episode. I liked talking about this film. I liked watching it. I liked doing something different. And like Ben just said, everybody, go check this movie out. If you're a science fiction fan and you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to watch it. And check out the short as well. Chad will link all that stuff up in the show notes. And, you know, as always, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, great pick, Ben.
Yeah, good. I'm glad everybody liked it. And Kev, I just wanted to say, watch out for those glowing eyes out on the horizon tonight.
I'm still looking at them. I've been looking at them ever since I mentioned it, and I'm going to go find out what it is here in a few minutes.
Because while we were talking, I was on Google, and I think it might be a chupacabra.
El chupacabra.
Oh my god. or like Archer describing Pam. You're like a chupacabra, but for dicks.
That show is so ridiculous.
It's so good, though.
Yeah, that deserves a talk.
Oh my god, it definitely deserves its own episode.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, man.
Anybody out there listening, you know, we frequently bring up these sort of things on the air about like what we might talk about in the future. So if there's anything you prefer, by all means, chime in, let us know.
Yeah, shoot us, hit us up on Twitter at EBDpod, or shoot an email at contact@ebd.fm and let us know any topics you want to listen to.
You can also contact us by carrier pigeon, which is our preferred method.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're hand delivered by Mike Tyson.
Ooh.
Actually takes care of our pigeons for us. It's
See,
amazing.
I was going to say, like, as long as it's one of the good feathers from Animaniacs, but I like the Mike Tyson thing.
I'll see you that and raise you that we have a very similar type of situation to the Pony Express that we use here at the podcast, but we only have one pony, and that's Shadowfax from Lord of the Rings.
Yep. You mentioned it back in one of the other episodes.
He delivers all of the communications.
So yeah, next week we're talking about ranking the MCU. It was an idea that Benny had last week, so I think that'd be a great show before the Avengers Endgame movie comes out. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let's rank the MCU.
I think it sounds great.
Criticisms be damned. People are going to shit all over us for this one, I think.
Whatever.
Who cares?
If people aren't shitting all over you, it's no fun, and you're not making good content.
Well, yes, exactly. We invite. By the way, we invite.
No worries, dudes. It was a good show.
Have a good night, guys.
Later, buds.
Talk to you guys soon.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you want to find links to the stuff we spoke about today, you can find them in the show notes in your podcast app of choice or at the website ebd.fm/8. If you have any thoughts on the show or an idea for a topic, hit us up on Twitter at ebdpod. You can find me at Moverine on Twitter. That's MOHLVERINE. Chad is at ChadNormal on Twitter. And Ben is at Jarhigo on Twitter. That's JARHEEGO. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, folks.